Hello, my name is Paul Kanyuk, and I'm going to be showing you guys another Katana demo. This one is building on my procedural still life setup and is going to be answering a few questions I heard online. One was asking how to do projections and shading in Katana, and that was following up on a demo where I showed how to do it in Maya, RenderMan for Maya. And the other is how to do splines. So first let's start with projections. So I'm going to kick off a preview render of the still life scene, which you can find on my other demos. And yeah, here we go. It's very simple procedural shading of some oranges on a plate on a table outside. Alright, so maybe let's say you want to put a label on one of these oranges. Say you want to put a brand on it. We could paint the texture in UV space, or we could use a projections by just taking a camera, putting it where we want it to be showing up on the orange, and just projecting the texture accordingly. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do actually is go to preferences and make sure I'm not using all my threads. Good, only using 7. Don't want any audio dropouts. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is find a suitable texture to project. I just so happen to have this BNL logo right here from Wally. Yeah, let's go ahead and make that the sticker. These are going to be BNL by and large oranges. So note that I have a text file here. We cannot actually read PNGs directly in RenderMan. We need to convert them to a TEX format. Now I believe I've shown this in other tutorials before, but here's a quick review. Bring up your command line. You should make sure you have PxrRamp on your path so that you can type TX make. For instance, PxrRamp version, you can see it's on our path. So make sure you are at least in this state. Assuming you can do that, we can call TX make directly on our textures. Now if you don't have it on your system path, you can find TX make in the same directory where RenderMan is installed. So I'm going to go ahead and go to C, Program Files, Pixar, RenderMan Pro Server 21.4, bin, and sure enough, TX make will be somewhere here. There we go, TX make, great. Alright, so we're going to call TX make on BNL.png, though it looks like we need to be in the correct directory. I'm going to CD to where my textures were located. Back. Alright, so call txmake.exe. And we need to pass it 2 arguments that are very important. We do not want this texture to tile because it is, it's a projection. We don't want to see repeating over and over again BNL logos. We just want one. So we need to use the S mode black and T mode black arguments. Then BNL.png, BNL.tex. So that's input and then output file name. Run that, and we'll get that. Now, this might have made some of your heads explode, like, oh my god, all this command line stuff. This sure can be wrapped up in a nice UI. RenderMan for Maya has a text make utility UI that you could use. But, this actually hasn't changed in over 15 more years running text make. This has been a very consistent thing in the CG industry. So perhaps it's a little bit of old school to run it this way, but I don't know. Software changes all the time, but this has never changed. I've always run text make like this. Anyway, enough history lessons. Let's go ahead and project it on these oranges. And the first thing we need to do is create a camera that is going to be projecting in the right location. I'm going to call this CC for camera create label cam. Make this orthographic, and I'm going to call the name label cam. And to make it go in the right location, I want to see it along with the rest of the scene, so I'm going to go ahead and merge it in, and let's go to our viewer. And let's make sure we're viewing. Oh, we haven't expanded the scene. Let's go to world. There's our oranges. And let's go ahead and make sure we've expanded label cam. There's main cam. Alright, so label cam is hanging out somewhere down there. I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, move it somewhere where it's projecting on the big orange. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Something like that. The chances of me getting this right the first time is slim, but anyway, that looks like roughly it should project where we want it to be. Let's move that up just a little bit. Cool. So it's not enough just to create the camera. We also need to create a coordinate system. I believe there's a coordinate system define. I'm going to put that, you know, right under between our label cam and the merge. And I am going to call it label space. And I think that's all we need to do. I'm actually not quite sure what we need to do for reference location, so let me quickly pop ahead and see what I did in my last demo. So embarrassing, but I don't have time to really rehearse these. I figured it out once and then I record it. So I should have just had that open already, like the cooking show, you know, where you just zoom ahead. So it looks like here, yep, you actually you give it looks like the name of your camera. Reference location. Okay. Cool. So what I'm going to do is then take the label cam and drag it into here. Okay, so that's our reference location, label space. This is now a coordinate system that we should be able to use in our shader. And I'm going to go ahead and save this before I mess up. Alright, so now that we have the coordinate system set up, we need to actually modify our shader to read it. Now, we just happen to have this orange surface right here. We could do a number of things. We could just use it to vary the diffuse color. We can use it to vary the specular as well. We could do some layering. You know, if you're gonna like put a label on something, it's usually a good call to start doing some layered shading. So rather than using this orange surface that we had before, I'm gonna go ahead and create a PSN shading node, and I'm gonna review real quickly how to do layered shading. This is something I covered in my city shading demo. But I'll show you guys here as well. So let's let Katana think about all the shaders it might want to load. There we go. Let's create a layer surface. I'm going to call this PSN orange layer surf. And what we're going to do is connect two layers, one for the orange itself and one for the label. But first we're going to need to do a layer mixer node. Let's create some space here to work with. Alright, so this next one will be a layer mixer. I'll call it PSN orange layer mixer. And I'm going to wire that into the input material of the surface. And now for the layer mixer, we're going to create a PSN simply for the orange skin. PSN orange layer. And look for a PxR layer node. Alright, and as for what the setting should be, it'd be tempting to just use the same surface we did before, but you cannot actually use a PxR surface. We need to use the PxR layer to work with the layer mixer. So I'm simply going to copy the diffuse color and paste it over the diffuse color. And for the specular, I believe it's enabled, gain of 1, and I think I cranked the edge color. So, alright, that'll be our orange skin. And I'm going to connect that to the base layer. But now we want to actually have a label as well. So I'm going to create a PSN shading node. Also a layer. And I'm going to call this PSN label layer. And set the out to layer 1. And for the label layer, we're going, yeah, I'll make it specular too. Also make it similarly shiny, but maybe I'll make the label rougher. Or I don't know. You should make it different. If you're going to go out of the way to, you know, have a layered shading, you might as well make the specular different. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, you are actually going to be rougher. And maybe a little bit of face color to make it somewhat metallic. Crazy. Alright, so we now have a label layer, and now we're going to actually read the label texture. We're going to do that using, I believe it's just a PxR texture node, but before we do that, let's let's create a new PSN node. So we actually have a projection layer node. I think this is probably what we should be using. Let me check real quick. Yeah, projection layer. Alright, so if you use a projection layer, we can go ahead and grab our BNL.txt file, and the real thing we need to do is, we can't just read the texture. We need to tell it which label to use or which coordinate system. That, I believe, is determined by what's connected to the manifold. So we're going to go to PSN, label text, and now we're going to create another PxrRamp shading node for the manifold. And coordinate system, finally, we get to type label space. Alright, and now we can connect the result of that into the manifold, and now we can connect the result RGB to the diffuse color of our label layer, and the result alpha to the layer 1 mask in our layer mixer. And I think that's it. I mean, we did a lot of steps without checking any renders, so the chance of me getting this right is 40%. Let's see. Yeah, we didn't get anything there. Darn. Let's go into our label layer mixer, make sure the right stuff. Oh, well, of course, we never actually replaced orange surface with layer surface, so let's go ahead and replace the BXDF. That'll do it. Alright, I told you 40%. You can't do that many steps without checking and have something go wrong. Alright, here's our layer. Well, that's cool. I guess I was looking through the perspective man in main cam, so I probably should have put that texture in a better place. But let's go ahead, and rearrange that and see what we get. So let's go to the viewer. Instead of being in persp cam, let's go to main cam. Yeah. So that's why it's where it is. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the label, hit edit on it, come on, and now I think our widgets, I think you selected the scene graph and theory, there we go. We have some manipulators, and those should set the values on the original camera create node. Oh, and I believe we had this thing as upside down, so let's go ahead and flip that over and see what we get. Cool. It's looking got our little BNL logo right there. Maybe I would move it here, but one thing I noticed is it's reflected, so we should probably scale the transform. So if we go to the viewer and just scale it like that, in theory we've now flipped it over. And let's see what we've done. I really don't want to noodle this too much more, so let's hope this looks good. Otherwise it'll get pretty boring. Oops. That's not our render. This is our render. Great, we got BNL right in the center of that orange. Cool. Oh my goodness. Maybe I want to move it. I kind of like having the label sort of split the highlight so you can see the material difference. So I'm going to just move it over a little. And you're wondering, will this thing shear and stretch and all the things we don't want potentially to happen? And yes, this is an orthographic projection, so you can get all sorts of weird stretching, so be very careful when you do this placement. I'm not being careful because I want to have this demo go quickly. So, alright, I'm just going to say that's good enough. Cool, so we got our BNL logo there. That's projection pretty much. The next thing I wanted to cover is how to do splines. So the UI for using a PxR spline, ramp was the question. I keep on writing spline. A spline and a ramp are pretty much the same thing. A ramp is essentially a color spline. Anyway, yes, what I want to show you guys is how to use a PxrRamp node, because that was a question I received online. So let's say you want the label not just to be an extra layer, but you want some discoloration on the skin where the label is, after the label ends. So one thing we could do is create a PxrRamp node and use the circular ramp in the same space as the label. So essentially we can have a blob of color, on the orange skin, kind of a halo around that to show some discoloration. So to show you how to do that, we're going to create a PxrRamp node, and I'm going to call this PSN label ramp. Alright, so the UI for the ramp node is not great. I believe this is probably just a current limitation, and this is going to be fixed at some point, but you'll notice that if you go to a ramp light filter, you have this lovely UI that you kind of expect of a modern ramp node. But here, no, it is old school. Essentially, we have to define position knots and color knots, or rather just positions and colors, arrays of each. And what a ramp really is a color spline, where you're, instead of interpolating between positions in space, you're interpolating between colors. So what we're going to do is create a circular ramp, and what we need is let's go with 2 colors and 2 positions, and we start with just 1. To add more, you just go to add a new entry and add a new entry. Cool. So positions are values between 0 and 1 along your ramp or spline that tell you, where you want your colors to be. So I'm going to have 1 at 0, 1 at 1. For the first one, I believe this one will be the center of our circular ramp, so I'm going to have this, well, I want the outside one to be the regular color of the orange skin, so I'm going to copy that, maybe copy those values, and then paste them there. Cool. And I'll paste those here as well, and then what I'm going to do is, I don't know, maybe I want it to be greener and paler or something, so I'm just going to slide over here, and maybe go to HSL and desaturate it a bit, something like that, maybe brighten it. I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going for here, but basically I want to show you that this works. So, then another important thing is we need a manifold. If we want this circular ramp to be in the space of the label, we simply should really give that a better name, PSN label manifold. And we can drag that into the label ramp and connect that to the color of the orange skin. So now we should have maybe like this color ramp that kind of spreads out from where the projection is. Oh yes, we should actually look at this render. It looks like I got my 0 and 1 reversed. It is green otherwise and orange around the label. So let's go ahead and change that. I'm going to, I think you can just reposition them. Brilliant. Alright, I'm going to do that. And the other thing I'm going to do is I found that that's a little bit of a, well, let's see what that looks like. And then I'll show you how I want to modify it. This will explain a little more how you do the ramp. Cool. So now you can see we have a little bit of a halo of color around it, but I'd love it to extend a little further. One way we can do that is modifying our ramp. Now if we had a proper UI for this, everyone I think would know how to do this. You add an extra knot in your ramp and you nudge it around to extend that halo. But we're going to do this just by creating a new entry on each of these. I'm going to have the middle entry be 0.5, and I'm actually just going to use the same color for the middle and the end, and what that will do is we'll extend that color to 0.5 in that manifold space, and now we should get an increased halo. Cool. So there we go. In one fell swoop, I've showed you guys how to do projections as well as use the PxrRamp node. This is we use projections and ramps all the time at Pixar. Suffice to say, I'm thinking we must internally have a better UI than that, but that's going to be. If you looked at what that light filter UI looked like, it's clear that, you know, with a little bit of PyQt work, you can put together a better UI. But in general, it's functional. You can totally create effects like this, no problem. We use this all the time in set shading and character shading. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the demo. And I will maybe. I don't think there's really any files I need to share. You can just download whatever you want. Just remember, it's useful if you have a label texture with an alpha channel, because that BNL texture did have an alpha, which is how I have that connection both to the layer there and the mix. So that's the demo. I'm going to save this and stop the recording. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks. Bye.